Have a historically a bad rap until you drive one, and I understand how you can accumulate them at this point because it feels stately, it feels like a Range Rover. It is engaging the way that only SUVs can be. It's not an air-cooled 911. And it was built to a higher quality, yet more technologically advanced standard than the other D1s and D2s. And when they are all functioning right, and they're not beeping and bonging and dinging, which this one has been thankfully, that module has been removed. So if this is an addictive, if this is caffeine, then a Freelander is meth, okay? So there's a little bit of a difference. This is something that I think the average Land Rover enthusiast wants to taste, experience, and just get a feel for. Howdy, welcome back to the Addicted Motors YouTube channel. My name is Troy, your favorite Land Rover, Range Rover automotive evangelist. I'll just go ahead and throw that out there. Bringing you some tips and some experience thoughts on modern classic Land Rovers and Range Rovers. And today we're going to be talking about the illustrious P38. Not a Range Rover. People don't call these Range Rovers, they call them P38s, and we're going to discuss the pros, the cons, the driving experience, and if you should invest in one. I don't want to say invest, I'll take that back. If you should purchase one. And that's where we're going to jump into this. So, if you're new to the channel, please like, subscribe, do all that fun YouTube stuff. I have thousands of videos, I've realized, at this point. And I actually have a few videos covering a late model P38, just like this one. But this is a different type of video because I've kind of titled this series, So You're Thinking About Buying XYZ, and most of them are Land Rovers. But this is going to be titled and focused on specifically the Land Rover, Range Rover P38, at least sold in the States between 96 and 2002. And this specific model is for sale, which is why I have it. It's owned by a friend of mine, we helped him purchase it, fix it, and he's driven around for a year, and now it's time to move on to something else. So let's jump into P38s in general in this specific Buckingham Blue 2002, 100,000 mile, great example of a driver quality Range Rover P38. Now again, my goal here is not to talk about the total overall manufacturer history or duration of build or anything like that when it comes to the P38. I just want to kind of talk about how they are now. And I think P38 owners fall into 2 or 3 categories. One is the original P38 owner. They bought one new and they still drive it. That's a very small percentage, but they still exist. These do pop up as 1-2 owner, low mileage, pristine examples, still on EAS, air suspension, all that stuff. And that is an anomaly, but still an awesome way to find and purchase one of these trucks. The second one is the P38 enthusiasts, and there's a lot of those. They are a small, tight-knit group of insane people. And I say that as an insane person who owns 4 to 5 Land Rovers and I have a Freelander, but the P38 enthusiast, I don't even want to say enthusiast, I want to say addict, has 2 to 3 to 4 P38s. They buy all the P38s, and there's a few of them, okay? I mean, every car manufacturer has its niche of that specific type of owner, but the P38 guys, that's something else. And the third one is the enthusiast, which I fall into that category, as owned a P38 or 2 in my time. We want to taste it, right? It's the forbidden fruit. Not as, I mean, if this is an addictive, if this is caffeine, then a Freelander is meth, okay? So there's a little bit of a difference. This is something that I think the average Land Rover enthusiast wants to taste, experience, and just get a feel for. Unfortunately for their bank account, once they do, they realize that it is pretty good. And I'd say that with a grain of salt, but it is pretty darn good. And let's kind of get into the pros and cons and what you should look for. So, real preliminary. This is a fairly good example. We bought this one from South Carolina because it had low miles, it had 97-something thousand miles. It had already been converted to coil. I think for the enthusiast, the casual buyer is a must. There's no air suspension to worry about. And it's just one kind of finicky thing that I don't think adds a lot of value to the car unless you fall into the original owners or those P38 fanatic group, which elevates you to a whole different cloud when it comes to it. But again, this one had a little bit of maintenance history. It was from the South. There was very little rust that we could see in the pictures. It was already converted to coils, and it generally presented as a good driver. And I think that is what you're gonna want to do when you buy one of these. I would not suggest you get the air suspension. I know there'll be lots of raging Rover fanatics in the comments that talk about how good the air suspension is and how reliable it is and just maintain it like everything else. And they had a Range Rover Classic 95 long wheelbase with air suspension. It's not a Land Rover or Range Rover anymore if you delete it, but that is a crowd that that's not a sustainable way to own one of these. And that's kind of what I want to go into and talk about. Now, US spec powertrains, 4-liter GEMS V8, and then a transition to a 4-liter or 4.6-liter Bosch or GEMS. You can kind of tell the difference. One has a little top hat deal, which I'll show you, and the other one has the kind of looks like Medusa's head, worms on the top intake. We'll check it out in a second. Both are fine motors. When we're talking about Land Rovers, I'm not even going to talk about the reliability of slipped liners or head gaskets or anything like that. That's a car-by-car basis, and most of them need every Rover needs a head gasket, let's be honest. But that's just a given. That's just something you have to do. It's like owning a Mondial or a 355 and knowing you do an engine out timing service. It's just a part of the ownership experience. So I'm not even gonna get into that. But if you're going to buy one, I think either a maintained 4.6 or a GEMS 4-liter, the earlier models, would be the way that I would do it. And again, it's user preference. But I do, again, I mentioned this in the last video I did, I do notice a difference now between the 4.6 and the 4-liter power-wise. And this does feel adequate, which is good because it is older, right? It's 2002. But the 4.6 that this one has is happy. It's stout, provides some good pickup. Made it to a 4-speed automatic transmission, just a normal ZF, which is great. So powertrain wise, as long as it's not overheating and there's not any kind of serious issues, these were engineered at a slightly higher level with better materials, better blocks. That's something that is constantly discussed and talked about in the Land Rover world. So, at the time, this was the highest quality Range Rover, and it was built to a higher quality, yet more technologically advanced standard than the other D1s and D2s. And when they are all functioning right, and they're not beeping and bonging and dinging, which this one has been thankfully, that module has been kind of like a normal, it's been like a Singer modification. Now the dinger and the buzzers go off. So, solid axle, front and rear, last year of the full, body on frame Range Rover solid axle feel. And I think this drives great. This has so much cushion, I guess, and lack of secondary motions around bumps and things like that, due to this solid axle setup, just like the G-Wagon that I talked about, that the crappy roads around the area I live, I don't even really feel them. It really makes a relaxed driving experience because I'm not worried about every little bump and bruise in the road, which when you have independent suspension vehicles on air suspension and whatnot, it doesn't feel as settled. And this feels nice and settled, and it drives very well. Paint, like, all Land Rovers, look around for paint fade on the hoods. Mostly on the hoods and the roof. I mean, P38s, most of them have okay paint. This one has actually been, these wings and whatnot have been repainted in beautiful Buckingham blue. It looks great due to a little bit of paint fade that really bothered the current owner. But other than that, they don't really rust like a Classic or an L322, those like kind of terminal little areas. Of course they rust, but they don't rust out, I guess. And most of them were treated in a way that, unlike, a D2 or something of the similar time, you don't have holes in the back of the frame and whatnot. I mean, I'm not a P38 expert, let's be honest, but rust is not the main terminal killer of these. Lack of maintenance, electrical gremlins, like all cars this era, is what is kind of it's not gonna prevent it from running, okay? I mean, that's most cars this era. They'll always run. It's just gonna be how much of the little annoyances can you handle, can you stand? When you have, if you have just a window issue or a module issue, if you have a blend door issue, if you have a heater core issue. This one had a clogged up leaking heater, take the whole dash out to get that repaired and fixed properly. So, those are the things, again, they're mechanical, but not anything that affects the actual running and driving of the truck. What kills these trucks and what kills the value to potential buyers is the little inconveniences caused by small electrical hiccups and little plastic pieces and whatnot throughout the thing. So, and it's a very cult-like thing because the people that own P38s absolutely love them, and the people that don't like them don't touch them. But everyone wants to taste it, and I think That's what more people these days, because it still is a Range Rover. It's the only Range Rover that is referred to, besides the Classic, as a P30. No one says, "Oh, look at my Range Rover." They go, "Look at my P38," which says something, I guess. And some people think of that as a negative connotation, and some people, it's a positive connotation. I think about it's a badge of honor to be a P38 owner. It is a badge of honor, I think, in the Land Rover world. Not as high as a Freelander owner. That's like up here. I mean, a P38, you're up there. You're pretty close, pretty high up there though. If you can do it, you can't handle it. So I think it's a handsome truck. Also, let's be honest. I think the ones that have the glass front headlights, the 01, 02 facelifted ones, I think are the most handsome. This one has a very clear face. He also had the lettering redone. It's a very smart, good-looking design. This has, I think, the 17-inch wheels. You can swap, mix and match with a D2 for your preference. Good ground clearance with this. Again, this one has the coil swap, which is nice. He added the taillight guards as a split rear taillight still, because it is a Range Rover. Good cargo space in the back. Where's the button? I forget. I hit this twice. And the access to the boot, and very big space, very similar. You can see how this is the progression of the Classic, and how the L322 that follows is also all in that same kind of design iteration, and it all makes sense, and is still a very presentable, usable package, even for something that's old as an 02. And this one has a trailer hitch and a trailer package. So let's fire up this lovely 4.6 Bosch 4.6 V8. P38, hood release right in the middle. Humming along. It's a very healthy motor this truck has. I've put a lot of miles on it. AC works. Again, we've had the heater core fixed and replaced, a new alternator, belts. I've got a huge list of things that have been done to make this truck a daily drivable. The owner of this truck is very particular. He didn't spare any expense in the maintenance of it. Again, him and his wife drive around, they daily drive it, which again is impressive in itself. And again, trucks that don't get driven have problems. Trucks that get driven a lot, I think, is the way to buy it. So again, this is not something that's been sitting. This particular one, a lot of life left in it, daily driver. It's kind of how you want to buy that. And you'll pay a slight premium for that, but that means that you're not going to have to jump right into mechanicals as soon as you buy. You can enjoy the thing that you are looking for, and just have a good time before you dive into whatever your personalization or projects might be. All right, so when you're looking at a P38, I know they have, again, it's a high quality interior. You can tell it still has a nice thin door panel and whatnot. It says Range Rover right there. Electric heated seats, adjustable steering wheel, dual climate control, navigation, all that fun stuff. And you want to be wary of little plastic bits. Check the headliner. This one did have a little bit of sag, so it's kind of been pulled up. Another thing you'll notice when you get in for most P38s is there'll be an ABS light on when you start up. That goes away immediately as soon as the wheel turns and the computer sense that the wheel speed sensors grab signal. So as soon as I pull away, that light goes off. It's how they are, right? And you might look at one at auction like, oh, it's got an ABS light. Nope, that's how it is. Very common to have your climate control rubber band or band piece that needs to be replaced. It still works. It's just you just need to replace that little strip on the back of it. Easy fix. Everything else seems to work fine. All the windows work. You've got the high-low transfer case that works as well. New for Range Rover for this year. I think it's a viscous center clutch, but also no traction control lights or anything. So the traction control in this truck is functional. What else is there to say about the interior? Seats are extremely comfortable. Great driving position. Looking out over the dash, it definitely feels like you're still in a Range Rover, and it's very close to the look of a Classic, so you understand why this was built the way it was. I can sit behind myself, plenty of space back there, and it's a it's a nice place to be, and parts are fairly cheap, and there's plenty of parts cars around, which makes this a doable. I always say if you're buying like a fun hobby project, off-road, on-road thing for you, don't buy it unless you can find similar vehicles in the junkyard. I think that's a pretty safe thing to do. So it has to be, 15, 20, 25, 30 years old. You're not finding 911s in a junkyard. I mean, you can barely find an E36 in a junkyard anymore, but they're still out there. So P38s, you can find them. We found awesome amounts of trim pieces and add-ons and things recently in our local junkyard, and that just kind of makes adds to the fun experience of ownership. Okay, let's take the P38 for a rip. Again, high Range Rover-like driving experience or seating position, that never changes. Super comfortable. Again, these seats are just about perfect for this truck. It's funny because they don't look like they would be. They look normal, but the way that you kind of bends to your back is special and still reminds you that it is a Range Rover. Super smooth, 4-speed ZF transmissions. Again, there's not, unless you have a head gasket issue or something terminal, mechanically these are pretty okay. They're pretty good. Less drive shaft issues. Most P38s weren't ever taken off road, so your diffs and whatnot are usually in pretty okay condition. I think he actually replaced the front diff on this one. I don't even know if it needed to be replaced. I think he just heard a slight whine, and he's very anal about things and replaced it. So hey, nothing to complain about there. But brakes, they feel power assisted, boosted. It might take a little while to get used to. They feel very similar to a 95 Range Rover Classic, but just grab a little better. So that same kind of assisted feel that is a little foreign and doesn't feel much like a new car. What else? There's really not a whole lot else that isn't just in regard to how you feel while you're driving it. I think a lot of people, that's what makes people fall for a P38. They have historically a bad rap until you drive one, and I understand how you can accumulate them at this point, because it feels stately, it feels like a Range Rover. It is engaging the way that only SUVs can be. It's not an air-cooled Miata, but it does elicit a sense of that this is an interesting functional thing, and that definitely adds a little bit to the experience. All right, let's if traffic will let me, let's pull out and see how many of those horses are left. Can't remember what the power figures for these, 230 or something like that. It's not insane. Put it in sport mode. Foot to the floor, 30, 40, 50, and we're there. Fine. You know what I mean? Like I said, it keeps up in traffic, it downshifts as it should, and it's very quiet. I mean, obviously the AC and whatnot's on, but it's not creaking or popping or banging. Very direct steering feel. Yeah, like I said, I'm saying that in this particular one, but I've driven probably 5 or 6 P38s, and they're all very impressive to drive when they're sorted. Now, this particular model, again, 2002, it just ticked over 100,000 miles, 133,000 miles. It is for sale. My buddy's asking around $12,000 for it. It looks great. It drives great. Again, he probably put over $8,000+ in recent maintenance. I'm talking about within the last year, which I will list in the video description. I would drive this car across country. Yes, does it need is there some cosmetic flaws which might, I want to say there are a few cosmetic flaws. There's a slight tear in the seat here. Again, the headliner, and a few other normal bumps and bruises synonymous with a 20-plus-year-old British SUV. But other than that, which are all things that are DIY-able and I think easily remedied, is about as sorted of a P38 as I've seen or driven from a driver mechanical reliability standpoint. It's never left him down. He's done everything that has been recommended to do to it. And on that note, I think just like the G-Wagon or the Puck that I posted a video of the other day, you're really buying the owner, you're not buying the vehicle. Obviously, you're looking for a vehicle, but in the space of which one should you choose the one with the owner seems to have the most understanding of it, the best maintenance, and I think that's what you can find in this particular package. Is it perfect? No. Has he spent way more than the value of this in recent important maintenance? Yes. So that's why I recommend fully that this is a good car and you should buy it with confidence. And again, just to show the dash, absolutely no overheating issues, clear, no check engine light, no ABS light, no track light, no beeping. Like I said, it's basically like Singer has touched this thing. So if you're thinking about buying a P38, should you? That's obviously the question we're trying to ask here. And I would say if it's an itch you need to scratch, which if you're watching this video, you might have that itch, I would say go for it, because there are worse things that you can buy in this category. And I think, like I said, most of them, mechanically, they're okay. The issues that bubble up are mostly, if you're handy, if you're capable, if you are able to interact with the other people in the P38 community, which is very vast and knowledgeable, which is also a huge plus. You have cheap parts, you have contacts, you have people that are able to help you. And if this is what you're looking for, I think it's a great way to enter the Land Rover, Range Rover world and just have a slightly more modern example of something that you can have a lot of fun with and get a lot of enjoyment over. And I think that's what Zach did with this one. He scratched that S, he did it right, and now it's for sale. So if you're interested in this particular P38, let me know. Shoot me an email, addicted.motors.us@gmail.com. And any other questions, let me know. We'll see you on the next video. Thank you for watching. Please like, subscribe.